My name is Dave Martin. I'm Vice President of Managed Detection and Response for Open Systems. CISOs are human beings, just like us all. When I have conversations with CISOs, there's two themes that come out consistently. One is concern about the unknown, and I think again, as a human being, this is what we tend to worry about, are the things that we don't know, and certainly CISOs are not immune to that. And for a long time in cybersecurity, we have not had good visibility into the potential attack surfaces. It's been a set it and forget it type of mentality where we deploy a tech stack, a security tech stack, and we set it, and then we sort of hope it does its job. And that leads to the unknown. Again, this idea that they're concerned about what you don't know. And the antidote to that, of course, is continuous monitoring. Once you set it, the industry is now realizing, I think correctly, that the problems are much more nuanced. The threat actor's skills, the modernization of the threat actor economy, where there's a lot of very sophisticated software available. You don't have to have a high skill gap as a threat actor to commit these attacks. All these things, essentially force forward-thinking organizations to come at it from a view of, I should assume I'm in a constant state of breach. And the only really way to know that is to be monitoring for those types of suspicious activity. I think most CISOs have a sense for where they are vulnerable. The challenge is that there's a big gap in making that information actionable. A lot of organizations that I interface with struggle with accurate inventory, accurate state of the devices and applications that they've deployed. And in fact, many attacks, it's been well documented, occur not necessarily because of a failure in the security technology, but due to misconfiguration. And so this is an example of, security professionals understand generally, I think most do, where they're vulnerable, but there's a big gap between that understanding and how do you make that knowledge actionable? How do you actually go in and harden the attack surface and discover vulnerabilities? And we have a saying that there's nothing faster than avoidance from a detection and response perspective. So if you can avoid the threat to begin with, you're infinitely better off. And this is where your question around understanding the attack surface is so critical to really get that right. There's been many studies that have shown that time matters when it comes to a security incident. The longer a threat actor is in a network, the more damage that they will do. And response time is critical, not only to detect, but to contain. And a lot of organizations that really look to minimize their risk are prepared. They have tabletop exercises. They have well-documented incident response plans. The containment that happens during a breach is dictated by the nature of the threat, not some general response. So for example, if a host is contained, or if a host is compromised with malware, you may want to contain it. If an account is compromised, that's a much different containment action than isolating a host. And so identifying the threat vectors that attackers use and having a plan is by far the most important thing. You don't want to try and be figuring it out under the pressure of a security incident. You want to do that in advance. Along the lines of the time matters, automation is really key. It's one thing to be prepared and know the steps that have to be taken to respond to an incident. Often, a response action has to be orchestrated amongst siloed IT systems or assets. And to the extent you can automate interacting with the security stack and with those assets and with the software, just the faster you're going to be able to implement the containment. And we've had campaigns, we've moved in cyber generally, and we see this in our SOC, where it used to be that you would have malware, a single incident, you would compromise that, and that does happen, but we're starting to see much more sophisticated attacks that are really campaigns. It's not about a hit and run, it's the actors attempting to establish a foothold, escalate privilege, And we've had instances where the threat actor has pivoted based on our containment response. And this is why time matters. And the more automation you can do, the better able you are to minimize the risk and contain the threat actor. So having a plan, and then to your point, figuring out how can you automate that, how can you script the various things is super critical. Probably stating the obvious, but every organization is unique, and they have domain knowledge in very specific areas. And if you look at an end-to-end life cycle of a cyber program, a mature cyber program, you have things that you have to do from an assessment perspective, from a prevention perspective, from a detection perspective, and a response perspective. And as an individual organization, you really have two choices. You either have to hire and build that expertise in all of those areas, or you rely on experts who already have the expertise. Many of those reading the blogs and watching this video will recognize that you do bring in, you have red teaming experts, you have vulnerability assessment experts, you have compliance experts in security and preventive control, and you have detection and response expert as well. And it's certainly best to optimize, decide for any organization, where are their weak spots, and look to optimize for outside help in those areas. Very well, actually. But that's probably more my mental outlook than anything else. I certainly have my share of stressors, as I'm sure we all do. But you have to compartmentalize as best you can, I've found.